Have you ever witnessed a moment so powerful, so unexpected, that it completely changed the way you see people forever? Stay with me till the end of this story, because what happened that night between a silent little girl, a lonely CEO, and a single dad will leave you speechless. And if it touches your heart the way it touched mine, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories that remind us of what truly matters in life. It was a crisp Friday evening in the heart of the city. The high-end restaurant shimmered with golden light and quiet elegance, the kind of place where important deals were signed and people spoke softly over polished wine glasses. At one of the corner tables sat Emma Carter, the CEO of a successful tech company. She was known for her confidence, her drive, and her unmatched reputation in the corporate world. But that night, something was different about her. She wasn't here for a business meeting. She wasn't here to network. She was here with her daughter, Lila. Lila was 8 years old. Her big brown eyes carried both innocence and silence. She hadn't spoken a word since she was 3. Life had taken her voice away after a traumatic accident that also took her father. Emma had done everything, a dozen specialists, therapy sessions, special schools, but nothing seemed to bring her little girl's words back. So, she had learned to live with the silence, though it broke her heart every single day. The restaurant staff smiled warmly as they approached. "Good evening, Ms. Carter," one said, pulling out the chair for Lila. Emma nodded politely, adjusting her daughter's pink sweater. She noticed how Lila clutched her stuffed bunny tightly, her small hands trembling slightly. Emma wanted this evening to be special. Just a peaceful dinner together, mother and daughter, but as she looked around, she could feel the weight of curious eyes. People stared, not at her, but at Lila. They whispered, they wondered why the little girl didn't talk. Emma's chest tightened with frustration. She was used to boardrooms filled with judgment, but not this kind. Not when it came to her child. At that moment, a man in a worn-out blue uniform walked into the restaurant. His name was Daniel Brooks. He worked as a janitor in the same building where Emma's company had its headquarters. He had been invited by a small charity group to receive a recognition award for helping an elderly tenant during a fire evacuation. He didn't belong to this fancy world, and he knew it. His hands were rough from work, his shoes were old, but his smile was genuine. Daniel spotted the only empty seat left, right next to Emma and her daughter. Hesitant, he approached. "Excuse me, ma'am, would you mind if I sit here? The rest are taken." Emma looked up, slightly startled, then nodded. "Of course. Go ahead." Lila stared at him curiously as he sat down. She noticed how different he looked, no shiny watch, no suit, just a kind face and gentle eyes. A few minutes passed in silence. The waitress came and took their orders. Lila sat quietly, drawing little hearts on her napkin. Daniel noticed her movements and tilted his head. Then, slowly, he raised his hands and began to move them in sign language. He signed, "That's a pretty drawing. Do you like to draw?" Lila froze. Her eyes widened. For the first time in years, someone spoke her language without words. She blinked rapidly, then signed back, a bit unsure, "Yes, you know sign?" Daniel smiled softly. "My son was deaf. He taught me before he passed away." Emma watched in disbelief. Her fork stopped midair as her daughter's little hands began to move faster, more confidently. The silent girl who hadn't expressed herself in months was now communicating, her face glowing, her eyes full of joy. Tears welled up in Emma's eyes. For so long, she had felt helpless, unable to connect with her own child. But this stranger, this humble man, had done in minutes what specialists couldn't do in years. Daniel and Lila continued their conversation through signs. They laughed silently, shared little jokes, and for the first time in forever, Emma heard her daughter giggle, not with sound, but through her soul. When dinner was over, Emma couldn't hold back her emotions. How did you do that?" she asked Daniel, her voice trembling. He smiled humbly. "Sometimes, we just need to listen differently, Ms. Carter. Not with our ears, but with our hearts." Emma looked down, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I've spent so much time building an empire. I forgot to build a bridge to my own daughter." Daniel nodded gently. "You still can. It's never too late." That night, something inside Emma changed. She asked Daniel to teach her sign language. At first, he hesitated, unsure if a CEO would really have time for that. But she insisted. Every evening after work, she met him at the park where he cleaned benches. They practiced together, and little by little, Emma learned how to speak her daughter's silent world. Weeks turned into months. Emma started leaving work early to spend time with Lila. They began signing to each other during breakfast, before bed, and at school events. The bond between them grew stronger than ever. The distance that once seemed impossible was finally gone. One day, Emma invited Daniel and his son's photo to her company's annual event. She walked up to the stage and said something no one expected from a CEO. She said, "I used to think leadership meant power, control, and success. But I've learned something much deeper. True leadership begins at home, with empathy, with understanding, and with love." She looked at Daniel, smiling through tears. "A man with calloused hands taught me how to hear again. Not with my ears, but with my heart." The crowd gave a standing ovation. Lila stood beside her mother, proudly signing the words "Thank you" to Daniel from across the hall. That night, the restaurant where they first met seemed a distant memory, but the lesson remained forever. Sometimes, the greatest connections aren't made through words, but through kindness. Sometimes, the people who have the least to give end up giving the most, and as Emma tucked Lila into bed that night, her daughter signed one last thing before falling asleep. "I love you, Mommy." Emma smiled, tears falling down her cheeks. She signed back softly, "I love you more." Because finally, after years of silence, she had found her daughter's voice again. Not if this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs hope today. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories that remind us that love doesn't always need words, it just needs understanding.